My parents demanded I forgive my brother for betraying me with my ex-wife, then insisted I support them and his new family financially. Hey Reddit, my parents always told me family comes first, no matter what. I believed it for most of my life, until the day that belief shattered. My brother and I were inseparable growing up. He was my best friend, the one person I trusted with everything. But as they say, betrayal only hurts when it comes from someone you love. And his betrayal wasn't just any betrayal. It was the kind of thing that rips your world apart and leaves you questioning every relationship you've ever had. 3 years ago, I married the love of my life, or so I thought. Emily was beautiful, smart, and had a way of making everyone around her feel special. She wasn't just my wife, she was my partner, my rock, my everything. I worked hard to provide for us, often pulling long hours at the firm while she pursued her dream of becoming an artist. I thought we were happy. I thought we had a future. But I was wrong. It started with small things, Emily being distant, her phone glued to her hand, her laughing at messages she wouldn't share. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She'd mentioned struggling with her latest project, so I figured she was just venting to her friends. Then came the late nights, the excuses about staying at her studio longer than usual, and the way she avoided my touch. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But something in my gut told me there was more to it. So one day, when she left her laptop open while taking a shower, I gave in to my suspicions. I opened her messages. What I saw changed everything. She wasn't just talking to someone. She was pouring her heart out, sharing intimate details about our life, and making plans to be with him. And that someone wasn't just anyone. It was my brother, Jacob. Jacob, the person I trusted the most, the person who stood beside me as my best man at my wedding, had been sneaking around with my wife. The messages went back months. They'd been meeting while I was at work, lying to my face every time we hung out as a family. I confronted Emily first. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try to make excuses. She just cried, saying she didn't know how it happened, that she didn't mean for it to go this far, that she loved us both but felt more alive with Jacob. It was the most pathetic string of words I'd ever heard. Then came Jacob. I called him, furious, demanding an explanation. He had the audacity to act like he was the victim, saying he hadn't meant to hurt me but that love is complicated. Complicated? He destroyed my marriage, my trust, my life, and he called it complicated. I cut them both off that day. I filed for divorce, blocked Emily, and told Jacob he was no longer my brother. My parents, however, had other ideas. They begged me to reconsider, to forgive Jacob, to keep the family together. They said everyone makes mistakes and that I was being too harsh. Too harsh? My own brother stole my wife, and I was supposed to just move on? For months, they kept pushing. My mother would leave voicemails about how much Jacob missed me. My dad would show up uninvited, talking about how family is all we have in this world. I stood firm. I told them I couldn't forgive something like this. Then came the final blow. Jacob married Emily. I didn't go to the wedding, of course. I couldn't stomach the idea of watching them play happy family after what they did to me. But my parents went. They gave their blessing, called it a new beginning, and told me I should have been there to support my brother's happiness. Their betrayal cut almost as deep as Jacob's. I went no contact for a while after that. I focused on rebuilding my life. I poured myself into work, started going to the gym, and even began dating again. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving on. Then, a few weeks ago, my parents showed up at my door unannounced. They looked nervous, almost ashamed. I should have known something was coming. They told me Jacob and Emily were expecting their first child. My reaction was cold. I said I didn't care. But they weren't just there to share the news. They had a request, a demand, really. They wanted me to help them financially. Apparently, Jacob had lost his job recently, and Emily's art wasn't bringing in enough to support them. My parents had been helping them out, but they were struggling too. They said since I was doing well, it was my responsibility to step up. I laughed in their faces. I couldn't help it. The audacity was unreal. They betrayed me by supporting Jacob and Emily's relationship, ignored my pain, and now they wanted me to fund their little happy family? My mother started crying, saying I was being cruel. My father called me selfish, saying I was punishing them for a mistake that should have been forgiven by now. They said if I didn't help, Jacob and Emily might lose their home, and how could I live with that on my conscience? I told them I wasn't their ATM. I said if they were so eager to support Jacob and Emily, they could figure it out themselves. Then I asked them to leave. That night, I got a text from Jacob. He called me petty and vindictive, saying I was letting money come between family. He said I needed to grow up and get over the past. I didn't respond. What could I even say? Now, I'm sitting here, wondering if I made the right call. Part of me feels guilty. They're still my parents, and I hate the idea of them struggling. But another part of me is angry, angrier than I've ever been. Why should I help the people who turned their backs on me? Why should I support the brother who destroyed my marriage and the woman who broke my heart? This isn't just about money. It's about respect. It's about loyalty. It's about the fact that I gave everything to my family, and when I needed them most, they chose someone else. But the story doesn't end here. I recently discovered something that could change everything, something that might just expose Jacob and Emily for the frauds they are. I haven't decided what to do with it yet, but one thing's for sure, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Before we dive into the next part, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support inspires us to create more captivating Reddit stories like this one. Now, let's jump into the next chapter of this dramatic tale. After my parents' outrageous demand and Jacob's infuriating message, I decided enough was enough. For years, I had been the punching bag for their selfishness, their betrayal, and their lack of accountability. But now, I had leverage, something that could completely upend the little happy life they'd built on the ruins of mine. It started when I was cleaning out old files on my computer. I stumbled upon a shared cloud folder that Emily and I had once used to store important documents during our marriage, taxes, home loan agreements, stuff like that. I had forgotten about it entirely, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. What I found made my blood run cold. There were folders labeled Jacob and Emily, filled with photos, receipts, and personal notes from before the divorce was finalized. The worst part? There were date-stamped screenshots of their messages plotting how to hide their affair from me. They talked about ways to keep me in the dark until Emily could secure her share of our assets in the divorce. Jacob even joked about how easy it would be to fool me because I was so trusting. The receipts were even worse. Emily had been using our joint account to pay for gifts for Jacob, expensive ones, too. Watches, clothes, even a weekend trip I thought she had taken with her girlfriends. And the kicker? There was a draft email Emily had written to her lawyer, trying to argue for more alimony by claiming I had emotionally neglected her. It was all lies, of course, but seeing it written out like that felt like a knife to the chest. For a moment, I was overwhelmed by rage. My hands shook as I scrolled through the folder. How could they have been so brazen, so calculated, so heartless? But then, a new feeling settled in, a cold, deliberate sense of purpose. I realized I could use this. The next day, I called my lawyer. I explained the situation and forwarded him the documents. He confirmed what I suspected. Emily and Jacob had committed fraud during the divorce proceedings. By hiding their affair and manipulating the timeline of events, they had essentially stolen from me. And now, I had the evidence to prove it. My lawyer outlined the steps we could take. First, we would file a motion to reopen the divorce settlement on the grounds of fraud. That could potentially force Emily to repay some of the assets she had been awarded, including the alimony she had squeezed out of me. Second, we could pursue legal action against Jacob for his involvement in the deception. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but it was possible. Before moving forward, though, I decided to give my parents one last chance to do the right thing. I invited them over for a talk, hoping, naively, perhaps, that they would finally see the truth and stand by me. When they arrived, I laid everything out. I showed them the documents, the messages, the receipts. I told them about my lawyer's plan and explained how Jacob and Emily had deliberately lied to everyone to cover up their betrayal. My mother's reaction was predictable: tears, denial, and more excuses for Jacob. She said I was being vindictive, that digging up the past wouldn't solve anything, that I was going to ruin the family if I went through with this. My father was quieter, but his disappointment was clear. He accused me of being obsessed with revenge and said I should focus on moving forward instead of trying to destroy Jacob and Emily's lives. I couldn't believe it. Even with irrefutable proof in front of them, they still chose Jacob. That was the moment I realized there was no saving this relationship. I stood up, looked them both in the eye, and said, "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." They left, furious and full of self-righteous indignation, but I didn't care. I was done playing the good son, the good brother, the good guy. The next day, I officially filed the motion to reopen the divorce settlement. My lawyer assured me we had a strong case, and though it would take time, he was confident we could win. Meanwhile, I started gathering more information about Jacob's finances. If he and Emily were struggling as much as my parents claimed, that might work in my favor. The worse their situation, the more leverage I would have if this went to court. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. A few days after filing the motion, I received an anonymous email. The sender claimed to have information about Jacob that would blow the whole thing wide open. Attached to the email were several documents, bank statements, text message screenshots, and even a video recording. The evidence suggested that Jacob wasn't just struggling financially, he was in deep trouble. He had racked up tens of thousands of dollars in gambling debt and had been borrowing money from questionable sources to keep his head above water. Worse, he had apparently forged Emily's signature on several loan applications, tying her to his mess without her knowledge. If this was true, Jacob wasn't just a liar and a cheat, he was a criminal. I don't know who sent the email, but I have a feeling it wasn't entirely altruistic. Maybe one of Jacob's lenders was trying to pressure him by exposing his secrets. Or maybe it was someone from Emily's circle who finally grew a conscience. Either way, it gave me even more ammunition. Now, I have a decision to make. I could take this new evidence to the authorities, potentially ruining Jacob's life and dragging Emily down with him. Or I could use it as leverage in the divorce case, forcing them to settle on my terms without going to court. Either way, this isn't just about justice anymore. It's about finally taking back control of my life, and making sure they can never hurt me again. But there's one thing I can't shake, the feeling that I'm stepping into a dangerous game, one where the stakes are higher than I ever imagined. And I'm not sure if I'm ready for what comes next. That's all for today's video, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more exciting content. See you next time.